Hey everybody, I am live today talking test automation as part of network modernization programs. Super excited with the guests I have here today. And just to preface, as a geek, you may be aware test automation is the secret sauce for speeding network upgrades. We're going to dive deep into that theme, talking about how automation can boost not just productivity, but save you money on CapEx and OpEx for the win. And amazing sponsor today at Spirent, who, as many of you know, are leading the way in 5G SD-WAN testing and validation verification with cutting edge lab and test automation tools and practices. And this is really about moving the industry forward to a world where, a vendor neutral expert can add value across many different technology platforms. And Spire brings some really unique insights and expertise in this space. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about partnering with experts that have the kind of skills we're going to see today and bringing those skills to bear on solving problems and adding value. So, really, it's about kind of a new approach to tech upgrades, tech modernization, and adopting new technology. Having said all of that, I want to introduce our guests here. Some really esteemed industry experts, many decades in the industry. I'll start with Raj, VP and Head of Global Business Services. Raj, how are you? Maybe introduce yourself to the viewers.
Very good. Thanks, Evans, for having me here. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you in this streaming session today. As Evans said, I'm Raj Balasubramanian. I'm the VP and Head of the Global Business Services at Inspirent. Uh, Been close to over 2 decades in the technology industry, primarily focusing on services and most importantly, providing value to our customers. So more about me later in this session today. Thank you.
Fantastic. And we're going to come back to Raj and Chris. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Evan. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
introduce yourself, a little bit about your bio and background, your role at Spire.
sure. Yeah, my name's Chris O'Loughlin. I'm based here in lovely Jersey City, New Jersey today, where it's record temperatures like the rest of the country. And Raj and I are partners in crime here, and I head up our global managed solutions organization. Touching all aspects of our customer base around the world, all of our products and services. So, really delighted to be here today, Evan, and we're looking forward to sharing some of our insights and knowledge.
And I'm really excited to have this conversation. Let's start with Raj. I have a bone to pick with you, Raj. You talk about technology led solutions in the session description here, which was given to me by you. Aren't all business, tech initiatives technology led these days in our space? So, what do you mean exactly when you said tech led versus emotion led or business led?
Yeah, it's an interesting question you ask, Evans. Technology-led solutions and transformation, I think two terms that you brought about in your question, right? So I think it's important to dwell more into it. At Spirent, right, we are a company that does amazing products, right? We realize technology, and pedigree has been products for many decades, and we've been successful at it. Somewhere down the lane, we find it extremely important to help our customers address and exceed their objective from a transformation standpoint. So we're talking of network transformation in this session, right? So talk of 5G or SD-WAN, all these are new technologies that's getting incubated. Our customers want to ensure that they're going to be first to the market. More importantly, I think they want to ensure that the customers, have a good experience from a services standpoint. And that's where I think Spirent has a very clear niche in the market because on one end we realize technology, and when we package that with solutions and services, there's a compelling a need in the market that we resolve today, right? When you combine these two and help our customers, in their journey of transformation, be it rolling out 5G or being validation of SD-WAN solutions, or think like just not technology, but processes like CI/CD or continuous transformation, right? All of these are things that we do extremely well, and I think it's time that we take it to our market and help our customers be successful. And that's the reason our services is packaged and positioned as something that's technology led, because there are very few players in the market that can address technology transformation today. And Spirent is one of those very few options in the market today. And hence, yeah, it's technology led solutions and services that we pride ourselves on at this point in time.
Yeah, well, that's it's good to know, and we're going to learn more about the approach you're outlining here. But first, Chris, just a question for you in this brief. I kept hearing Spirent talk about being the capital THE leader in 5G lab and test automation. That's a pretty strong statement. How did you come to that conclusion, beyond just the usual marketing verbiage?
Yeah, it's a great question, Evan. I'll give you my spin on it. Look, we do have, as Raj mentioned, best in class products, right? We're long known in the industry and in the sector for our pedigree and our DNA around testing. And
Mm.
I can pull out any number of folks from our company and they can go into the weeds on that. And that is foundational, right? We couldn't be where we are today without that. It's an absolute requirement. It's like getting your MD degree before you actually go practice medicine. You have to have that, right? But what I think sets us apart is far beyond that, right? It's our experience. It's our focus on the outcomes of our customers, right? Anybody can go out and peddle their wares, right? But if you don't understand the why of our customer base, then anybody in the space is pretty much going to be limited to just their products, right? And we aspire and are been producing and capitalizing on our relationship and our place in the ecosystem, this broad ecosystem, to help our customers solve much bigger problems than just take our product and install it, and we'll teach you how to use it, right? We 5G, for example, right? The why of 5G is not just teach me how I can test PCF better because I used to only know how to do PCRF. Let me learn how to test PCF, right? Yeah, we can do that. Fine. The real why is how do I accelerate my time to market so that I can increase my ARPU and simultaneously reduce my costs and keep up with this never seen before velocity of release streams that are coming from a multivariate of vendors, right? It's a minimally 10x problem that this tech generation is facing in network, minimally 10x more complex. Okay.
Wow.
The benefits are also probably more than 10x, but the complexity is 10x. So we're different because we focus on the outcomes. We don't go into our engagements and just say, hey, let me help you test that thing. We say, hey, what are you trying to achieve? And the reason I talk about that is the group that Raj and I represent within Spirent was formed about 3 or 4 years ago by our board and our CEO to really focus on helping our customers solve these problems with outcome-based managed services engagements, right? So we put feet on the street or people back in rooms, whatever is required to help them solve these very complex problems focused on their KPIs. And it's been a big success. I'll just end with the reason we went here is our customers were always asking us, how do I do this? Great. You've got a great product, but how do I actually solve this problem to get this product to market and satisfy my customers? So I don't know if that helps, but where we sit in the ecosystem and our experience and our expertise is what differentiates us.
I think that says it all. My big takeaway: 10x in complexity of networks and beyond these days. That is quite a challenge. And I think that's where the A word comes in, Raj. Automation is not just nice to have, it's a must. But given all that complexity of cloud native and virtualization and decentralization and you know geographic locations, the devil's in the details. How do you think about automation in that context?
I mean, automation is everywhere, right? Just not about networks. I mean, at homes, we have automated sensors. We want everything to be done at the touch of a button. We have grown lazy with time. We don't want to do hard work, as as you can relate to. So yeah, automation is important, right? Especially with the disaggregation of networks. You must have heard of the software-defined network and virtualization, right? Where things are moving virtual, things are moving to the cloud. So there are a lot of things that has to be done as a, as a precaution, right? You got to preemptive task, and all of that really we cannot afford to have a lot of manual work. It's because time is of the essence. Latency got to be low. So when you look at all of these things, automation is the answer, right? The industry has evolved, right? Today we talk about just not doing development and testing in a sequential way. We got to
Mm.
develop, test, deploy, right? Probably in a matter of minutes. And the enabler for us to do that is automation today, right? So if you don't have automation, I think we go back to a classic problem of high opex, right, to maintain what's there, or a problem of making budgets available to build something new. In the absence of a roadmap of automation, I don't think none of these will get done efficiently. And that's where I think, right, having a solution that eventually gets automated in quick time, and thereby ensuring that you're able to scale your business. Given that 5G is all about delivering. 5G as an example, right? You want to watch gaming on your mobile phone. You want to stream live video. I'm sure some of us are streaming videos on their mobile phones as they're traveling to work or as they're traveling to meetings. And for you to scale, I think you need to deliver your software faster. You need to deliver applications faster. And again, the enabler for that is only going to be automation. When you blend AI and analytics in an automated fashion, again, the results are out to see in terms of the quality of the network that's providing to the end customers. So aspirant to embrace automation in a big way, right? Just not the products that we have. We have meaningfully reimagined business in terms of, hey, how do you use these products which can develop a framework for automation, but most importantly, how does it scale for higher workloads as more customers start adopting this framework. And therefore, I think automation is, like you rightly said, it's not about a nice to have thing. It's an essential ingredient of any initiative across any technology space that you can imagine. So we continue to do that. We continue to invest, and most importantly, right, I think there are live solutions today that we have deployed in an automated fashion, which is reaping the benefits, right, both in terms of an efficient operating model, as well as a cost-effective way to build new stuff from a capital expense standpoint.
Fascinating. But Chris, I mean, I sense a little bit of a contradiction here. We have a incredible need to automate across our enterprise and infrastructure networks and beyond, and yet that's a tall order for organizations whose skill sets are not necessarily in test and automation. So what do we do? Do we have to go back to school? Do we have to start beefing up our skills? How do we address the
Yeah,
challenges of the need for
that's
automation versus the
it's a great
people?
point. It's a great point. So there's a couple of approaches to that. Number one, um, the tools that are available now are much easier to use. So
Mm,
the average person that's conducting tests does not need to know as much intricately as a former generation might have. In fact, it would be impossible, right? I mean, the disaggregation of the core, for example, alone would require somebody that understands the application, understands the cloud underlay as well, and then the interoperability of all that with a multi-vendor environment. So those it's almost, as I mentioned before, with the complexity, it would almost be impossible to find somebody who, not to mention security, with all the expertise around that. So a lot of the tools these days are much more abstracted, right? So you can do a lot more with drag and drop kinds of applications. But one of the things that we do, as part of our managed solutions engagements, is that we will come in and, for example, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but for example, we can help not only establish the framework and the fabric to build an application, an automation environment, automated environment, but we could help take an antiquated or a manually executed library and automate that within a relatively short amount of time,
Mm.
as a kind of a service, and in the process teach our customers how to use some of the more modern methods for conducting, automated testing. And so, yeah, it's not an overnight thing, but it's actually not as hard as one would think to get to the next level um, in that regard.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm really optimistic about that based on what you said. And Raj, this isn't just about time to market, which you mentioned, but there are other many tangible, intangible benefits. What say you in terms of, I don't know, productivity, OpEx, CapEx savings, NetX savings, and optimizing? The list must go on and on.
No, absolutely. There are many intangibles. I mean, look at this. Look at also the culture aspect of it, right? I mean, one is obviously the numbers. By embracing automation, by looking at new technology incubation, you make it relatively easier because it's a given, right? We learn along with our customers when it comes to new technology. Standards are evolving, right? So when new standards come, it's not a question of having a reference of having done this somewhere. So the customers as well as us learn together and implement it, and that's where I said there's a niche as far as new technology transformation programs are concerned. But beyond that, when you look at the culture and the skills aspect, I think it's extremely important to recognize and appreciate it. Remember, I spoke of DevOps, right? I mean, today there are companies that basically release code by the minutes, if not the days, right? Gone are the time that you have software releases where you got to wait for 6 months or a quarter or a year. You actually get software releases every day, right? So, from a cultural standpoint, how do you be agile? How do you be nimble? How are you flexible to ensure that what gets developed gets tested, gets launched, as well as you get feedback from customers. So all of that has to be done in minutes, and that's where the intangible comes in terms of the mindset that we all have to embrace as far as rolling out new technology is concerned. And therefore the processes, the technology, as well as the tools play a very important role when it comes to these challenging initiatives. And therefore, right, the point I'm trying to say, I mean, along with commercial benefits, I think there is an aspect of motivation. There's an aspect of challenges that that the workforce will have to embrace for these kind of initiatives. And we at Spirent are enabling that change, just not inside within the company, but as well as in the market. Because if we can roll out products, if we can roll out solutions that impact the velocity in which these changes happen, that's a win-win for the customer as well as us, right? And that's the initiative we've been working for almost 4+ years, ever since Chris and I started to look at this managed solutions portfolio with Inspired, right? It's like a stealth startup. We do everything. There are no boundaries in terms of as long as it positively impacts the customer as well as our business. There are no boundaries that we draw in terms of what can be done, right? And therefore, right, that is rubbed off in the way our solution offers as well as our products has been taken to the market, and eventually our ability to execute projects. So the intangibles are quite a lot, because there's a thrill in seeing some of these technologies realized with top tier customers, be it service providers, be it equipment manufacturers, and in the recent past hyperscalers as well, because they have an aspiration to also start rolling out enterprise mobility, right? And for them to do that, I think this flexibility in terms of solutions and eventually generating outcomes, right, in a way that is not too heavy on your wallet, at the same time ensuring that you roll these services out to the market in quick time. All these are enabled, right, by this strong blend of tools, technology, as well as people that we take along as a whole package to our customers. And more to
So
be
I
done.
like what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
But where do we start? Is always the question. So, Chris, where do
Yeah.
we start, given
Yeah.
all the
This is a great.
challenges and complexity here?
Yeah, great. Thanks for pulling the slide up, Evan. And I think Raj set us up well here. I mean, this is this pictorial right now. I like to refer to this as sort of an abstracted time and motion study, and it's based, by the way, based on real world work that we've done with a multitude of customers in every part of our ecosystem, whether it be a NEM, a carrier, a government, some other type of an enterprise, hyperscaler. This problem exists for most organizations that do any kind of large scale testing. So if you look at the top swim lane, you'll see a representation what Raj was talking about in the old way, right, or current way for many people, which is many organizations, which is still very manual, right? For basic areas of time consumption around test setup in these complex labs, right? There's the setup. What a setup means, I have some sort of a topology or a context that I need to set up to test, right? Usually those can be simple to very, very intricate because they're representing some sort of a network out in the real world, right? Then the big aqua light blue box in the middle there is the execution part. And again, depending on how complex the test case set is that you want to run, we've seen this. This is a case study, but we've seen this, run on average 90 days in some cases, right? Then you have what happens after you run all those tests. You have to, look and analyze you have to report on it, right? And then you have to analyze the reports and make some determinations and, what failed, why, and more importantly, not what failed, because that's the whole point of testing. Something should fail. You're looking for failures, trying to create failures, but why? Why, right? So the analysis is a very, very, very important part of this. In fact, arguably the most important part, because that's what's going to help you avoid these problems in the future and in the production network. But this is sort of the classical time and motion approach. And I will say for a second that the setup part is somewhat understated in the sense that what happens so often in lab environments is that there's this whole set it up, then rip it down, then set it up in some other way, then rip it down, then set it up in some other way, because you have these, you have discrete set of inventory that you can make use of, generally speaking, right? And to make that matters worse, they might be in certain geographic areas around the world, and you can only access those in that place. So, fast forward to the solution that, we try to help our customers with, and in the bottom swim lane. And I'm not reading all the bullets and such, but the basic point is, I don't know if you can make it out, right? But in this particular case, we're talking about something that on average would take 18 weeks. That's no joke. 18 weeks. These are complicated. I'm talking about big, large scale, complex types of testing. And it can be shrunk down to a matter of hours. And so the question is, where do you start, right? And what goes into this? What goes into this is some best in class tools, right? That automate both the lab and the test execution itself. And then there's work, right? I mentioned earlier, you got to actually get your whole library into this world, right? It's like we've all lived through, moving from one generation of technology to the other, or those who had before there was camera phones, you had those little flip cameras or whatever, and you had to get you got to move everything in, right? So this does not have to happen serially. It's important to understand that you can actually start automating the lab environment and the tests in parallel. But what you really want to get to realize full benefit of an automated and modernized lab setup is to automate that lab fabric, right? The testing, the setup, all that setup I talked about, that tearing up and tearing down and setting up and tearing down. You want to automate that. You also want to make all of your inventory globally accessible, right? You don't want to have pockets of things that are unused and then pockets of things that are overused, right? You want to access your inventory anywhere, anytime, no matter where it sits, right? And you don't want to have to worry about setting it up. You can cut that down to, a matter of minutes. And then the execution of those tests, once they're automated, the beautiful thing is not only is the execution automated, but the regression, all the regression tests I mentioned earlier, you got to find out what went wrong. Well, I fixed it. I got to test it again. That all becomes automated, right? So, and then many of our tools and a lot of tools out there will do automated reporting and automated analytics to help you identify not just when it failed, but where it failed, why it failed. And these become, really, really important countries. So where do you start? You start, oftentimes people do focus on the automation of the lab, but the test cases can be automated in parallel.
Mm, that's amazing. Well, Raj, you've lived in this world for 2 decades. You must see a lot of actual real world examples where this kind of approach has been successful for your customers, maybe even in 5G. Can you give us a story or two?
Yeah, absolutely. I can walk you through some of the success stories, right? Without mentioning the name of our customers, obviously. I mean, for a global equipment manufacturer, we basically, reduce the time to set up test environments. Uh, I'm talking of thousands of test environments, right? Which would take probably months to a few weeks, right? And the way we did that was going back to the big A, as we all refer in this session, is automation, right? The ability to to mimic the profile of an environment, to instantiate it, allocate the resources to that specific test bed, and then have the right users schedule time on those environments. All was done in automated fashion. And guess what? This was not local to a region. This was done globally. So eventually, the users had the ability to actually book environments by using a portal where they could schedule the time they want. They could request for the resources they needed in terms of tools and configuration, everything else, and bang, they had the environment up and running at the time they had the test schedule. What it basically did is it shrunk the need to have multiple local labs set up to do the similar testing. Rather, they had a few labs which could be accessed globally, and therefore testing was much more efficient. And yeah, obviously the bottom line as well was extremely effective and efficient in terms of cost savings, right? So this is a classic example where we use some of our products as well as services, package it as an outcome, and guaranteed our customer the benefits of embracing automation in a much bigger way. Now, talking of 5G, since you alluded to it, I'm talking of something which was 3 years ago. I mean, 5G by now is, I won't say it's dated, but it's much more mature than what it was 3 years
Mm,
ago. But in 2020, right, when 5G was still gaining steam, right, we had a tier one service provider who was eager to, get market leadership, right? And in came Spirent, right, with our world class products. We said, hey, not only you need to use the products and functionality, but you really need to, appreciate the workings of some of the solutions that they procure from other vendors, be it network functions, which was then called a virtual network function. Now it's graduated to something called cloud native functions, right? So it keeps evolving, right? The ability to test it, the ability to validate it, and most importantly, guarantee that the service that our service provider is launching in the market, right, is foolproof, and more importantly, wows the customer, right? That's the task that we took up, in ensuring that we do this end to end for this customer. And this is where I talk about the learning process, both with the customer as well as us, and most importantly, the ecosystem during the journey of that transformation program. It's just not the customer as well as us. It was also the provider of network function that learned a lot in terms of what we need to do to optimize the functionality of the network function. What do we need to do to tune it better? What should be the stability, right? Those important statistics were given by us. Evans, there's some noise around. I just join you back in a minute. Sorry about it.
yeah, I think Raj may have a test lab in his basement there that's busy at work.
That's right.
But Chris, this would be an amazing approach for any telco 5G provider out there. But even an enterprise, it seems to me, could take advantage of this approach and architecture. It's
Oh yeah.
particularly a large distributed global enterprise is almost like a telco in many ways. What say you?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, many of the largest enterprises are telcos in their own rights, and in some cases more complex because they're serving a very disparate sort of customer base. Some, you think about large financial institutions that are supporting not just the ATM down the street, but they're supporting, high frequency trading of the highest
Mm,
value, right? And these things can't go down, right? And now you're talking more about the wireless component that's entering into the enterprise space, not just with Wi-Fi, but the promise of private. I'm not with just Wi-Fi, but the promise of private 5G
right, right.
and the slicing capabilities. I mean, what needs to be supported on these global networks is unbelievable. Not just what we're used to at home with streaming and interactive gaming,
Right.
but our world depends on it. So, you know, um, these things are also monitored, managed remotely. This is the other thing:
Mm.
is that globally and any time, right? We all know that there's people working around the world, on these things all the time. So that's another part of this that has to be accessed. But you're right about that, Evan.
Yeah, and I imagine as you drill down, it's a never-ending kind of circle of complexity. Are the networks getting more complex or simpler? Every time I think, people bring simplicity, you have disaggregation now, you have virtualization in ways you haven't had in the past.
Yeah.
Which so how do you stay ahead of the curve? One step ahead of the curve at least.
So the answer is absolutely getting more complex. The benefits are dramatically increasing. What's available in these network technologies, 5G, SD-WAN, et cetera. Nobody would be moving to these if it weren't both for the feature richness and also the cost, right? The cost benefits, right? That's the
Mm,
that's the whole promise of cloudification, right? Disaggregation, virtualization, et cetera. But the complexity, and we see this time and time again, where any part of our ecosystem endeavors to start testing and releasing into their live network in the way that they used to, they always run into massive problems because of just it's. Let's take 5G one more time. There's never been a network ever like this.
mm,
It's not like going from 2G to 3G to 4G. Those were all relatively similar. They were all an appliance component. The function was an appliance.
mm,
Appliances don't exist anymore. There's no such
mm.
thing. 5G won't work with automation. It just won't because it's too complex, right? So I think maybe we have another slide here that talks a little bit about.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Um,
a super hot topic, as you know better
yeah,
than I, on 5G
yeah,
standalone deployment. You have various telcos in various stages, and it brings huge efficiencies and opportunities in the network. But the big question is, how do we validate for 5G standalone? It's something, as you said, has never been done.
yeah. So I think this is interesting, because what we'll talk about here, and I might ask you to jump forward to the other slide in a second, just to emphasize the point. But what we're saying here is like, look, one of the ways to handle the complexity is you got to have a framework, right? You got to have an attack plan. This is
Mm,
now these steps up 1 through 9 are laid out. 1 through 10, live assurance would be the 10th. They're laid out in a serial fashion only for illustration, right? Most of this has to happen in parallel,
mm,
right? But what it illustrates is how you have to break down the problem, right? So as I said before, right, look at these items, these steps: cloud infrastructure, the 5G compliance and performance, the CNF resilience, the security. Then if you're deploying ORAN as a carrier, you got to worry about that now. There's another level of disaggregation out at the edge, right? Wireless, you've always had to worry about. Backhaul and xhaul, you've always had to worry about. But now you have this other new edge thing called MEC, right?
mm,
And then, as you've always had to worry about launching it and assuring it into the network. But I'd say there's about there's about 4 or 5 boxes here that never existed before. You never had
mm,
to worry about an appliance and the cloud part underneath it. They were one thing. That's all you had to worry about. There's never been a 3GPP specification that had security embedded into the core of the specification. The SCAS requirements, as they're called, around 5G core security have never existed before. All the encryption requirements and other aspects. There's well over 100 requirements within that SCAS specification that no network person has ever worried about. They usually just took the appliance box, sent it over to their security department who pen tested it. They sent it back and they said, yeah, it works. That's not the case anymore. Security is a living, breathing part of the core. The software, it's all software based now, right? So you have to have an approach, and this is one way to attack the approach. Attack it, is to break it down into these pieces and to make sure that you're testing every layer and every part, but also the interoperability. And if we just fast forward to the other slide, Evan, I might be able to emphasize this a little bit more. So, breaking this down, one of the things, and Raj, let us know when if you're able to jump back in. I don't know if the noise has stopped, but
I'm back.
Yeah. You're back. Yeah. Okay. I'll tee this one up and then you can finish it. But this is we like to further break this down, right? You've got all these compliance issues and capacity, but now you've got these other issues around security and resilience that you never had to worry about before, and scalability. And then we like to attack it from hey, let's look at the nodes, then the adjacency, then end to end. Then what really sets us apart is taking all of that testing, lightweight, virtualized, agent-based testing, and being able to reuse it in the live network. This is revolutionary. This hasn't been done before. So, Raj, I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
No, yeah, like you said, right? With virtualization, I mean, the onus of the functionality lies more in the software. What I mean is there are going to be more faults in the software because what once a box is now a software image, right? Running on a general purpose hardware. So when you look at this, right, I think the areas of testing has probably tripled or probably gone 10x times in terms of the things that needs to test. And therefore you have the nodal test where you test something in isolation. You have adjacent where two different images or software network functions will have to be tested, and eventually end to end. And not to discount the complexity of this, right? When you talk of 5G, you also have a very integral component called the cloud, because today it's going to be rare if someone says they've deployed 5G on a piece of hardware and something that's not hosted on a cloud. So that means that, I mean, the nuances of testing, the cloud platform also becomes important, and the various aspects of security that Chris just mentioned about. So when you look at all of these, I think testing has to be, sort of a religion in terms of how you embrace it, how you strategize testing, and most importantly, how you execute it. Because, like I said, the fault is going to be more in software, and the sooner you find that, right, the cheaper it's going to be in terms of fixing those bugs, and most importantly, the most stable, I mean, the stability of your service along with those functions will improve with time if you can catch it much earlier. So these are all, I mean, in fact, I would pride ourselves saying we are one of the industry's first to have actually launched a 5G core test pack, which we call as L5APs, in the market 2 years ago. And those test packs, which can be on a subscription basis, has actually increased with time as we further unravel and discover more challenges that the industry would face in terms of adopting 5G in a much more mature fashion. So the framework and the test methodology, as well as various aspects of testing that you see here that goes in testing of 5G standalone, will eventually be more of an industry standard that I think the industry will have to eventually embrace as from a testing maturity standpoint. So over to you,
Yeah,
Chris.
it's great to see this presented here. And things like multi-cloud and introducing hyperscalers into the mix. I mean, this is, I hate to
Right.
say more complexity, but yes, that is the reality. And Chris, one question I do have is, we talked about a lab and we talked about production environments, but where's the boundary these days between those when you talk continuous testing and continuous
Yeah,
monitoring? These
that's
aren't these aren't like, this isn't a Chinese wall in the old sense, right? I mean, what does a new world look like versus the old days of having just a separate lab?
no, great point, Evan. I'm glad you asked that because a lot of these slides even have they kind of organize things into ways of thinking. But the boundaries, the problem that most companies are facing, and this is not just telcos launching 5G, it's also enterprises launching things like SD-WAN, right? is that most organizations, I said this before, try to take their old game plan, attack plan of testing, and apply it to the new world, and it won't work. It just will not scale, and you won't be able to keep up with it. So while you still want to break things down into logical approaches, the boundaries are literally have already come down, right? I mean, the cloud all by itself has dissolved those boundaries. And I'll give you, there's a kind of range of examples. You mentioned public, private, cloud, and that debate is always going on within carriers. It's also going on within enterprises. How much of it do we keep in our private cloud? How much of it do we put in a public cloud? So that's a complexity issue all by itself. But then you take the pre-production world and the production world, right? And everything is moving to the cloud. And there's one carrier, there's a notable carrier, it's been in the press quite a lot, who said, they went from scratch in their 5G deployment. And they said, look, I'm not even going to waste time with a traditional lab. It makes no sense, right? We're going to start doing our testing right in the cloud, right out of the gate. Now, do they slice it and cordon off parts of that? Yes, of course. Logically, you can do that because you need to have security, mindful of security requirements and things like that. And you don't want to impact the production activity. But why set up some artificial representation? Now we can do a very good job of emulating things, but why not do it in the same exact cloud? Why not put that what you're going to be doing to test it before you release it? Why don't you put it in the same cloud? And so these lines have completely blurred. And I'll just give you one other thing, is that as I mentioned before, the testing that we do now is also software based, meaning that we use these things called virtual test agents in this long-standing practice in the pre-production lab world. It's not a long-standing practice to employ those test agents, virtual test agents, in the production world. But that's our approach, and you see that here. The last little thing in the arrow there is active testing. We use subsets of these lightweight virtualized test agents that include the tests that we've run, the much larger test cases that we've run in pre-production. We take small non-performance impacting pieces of those and deploy them in the live network to get that real-time, as they call it, active testing, where we're injecting synthetic traffic that doesn't impact the performance into the live network. So we're getting real-time feedback. And guess what? We can feed that back into the pre-production world. So this evolution, is continuing. This life cycle continues to feed on itself.
Yeah, really interesting approach. And in fact, there's going to be even deeper dive in an upcoming webinar that Spirent is doing on, overcoming some of the delays perhaps that have held back standalone 5G deployment and getting to revenue, getting to new services, new customers quickly. That's the name of the game, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
we're in the process of wrapping up here, but any thoughts or key takeaways, Raj or Chris, here as we get into the final inning?
You want to go first, Chris?
Sure. I would just leave with this. Look, if there's any, first of all, thank you, Evan. This has been great. Thanks for taking the time with us. If there's any enterprises, telcos, governments, hyperscalers, NEMs out there that are we get called all the time to help try to solve these problems, but we're here. We actually start all of our engagements in a consultative fashion with assessments. We'll do an assessment of the way that you're set up today, and can just give you a view of what's working and what's not working in the world today of modernization and automation. We'd be more than happy to engage in those conversations. So
fantastic. Yes, I love the approach. Don't wait to call when there's a problem.
That's right.
Which is our human nature and business nature.
That's
Proactivity is the answer. Raj, what say you?
Yeah, I'll just go back to where we started today, Vince. I think we started off with technology-led solutions and services. I think that's extremely important because, like I said, that's the niche. Eventually, our ultimate goal is to be the McKinsey for services, right? Because we're really not looking at playing in a commodity market, right? We pride ourselves with the technology that we built, realize, and we want to ensure that there's more relevance, right, in terms of how we package them just not as products, but also as services to solve a problem for our customers, right? And for us to do that, I think it's this combination of a world class product portfolio blended with services which is high end is definitely a good recipe for success for any company that's embracing technology transformation, right? And that's where we want to be, and that's where we continue to play, right? In the near, mid, and eventually in the future as well. So thank you so much for having us. I think it was extremely engaging conversation, and some questions which really got us thinking more in terms of what more we can do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've had some great feedback as well. I can't believe it's September already. I'd love to know what you're looking forward to professionally over the next few weeks, couple months. I'll be at MWC in Las Vegas, so I'm looking forward to getting out in the real world and shaking hands and meeting people. What about you, Chris? What's on your agenda, your radar the next few weeks?
Oh gosh, I spend a lot of my time in an airplane. That sounds like you might as well.
5G is coming to your airplane as well, another
that's
endpoint
that's right.
to
That's right.
test.
Yeah. Connectivity is getting a little better on airplanes, but I'm with our customers most of the time.
Mm.
So a lot of time around the U.S. and I'll be in London next week, actually visiting a customer as well. So
Oh, fantastic.
that's most of my time. Yeah.
And Raj, what about you? Any travel overseas? I know you spend a lot of time in Asia
Yeah,
Pac, for
travel not as
example.
much, of course. I like to be grounded, not live midair. So, so I'm pretty much yeah. I mean, I'm traveling domestically. Hopefully, I should see you in Vegas as well, Evans, for
Okay.
MWC last week of September, I guess. But yeah, so far I think we've been busy building up this portfolio, right, which is compelling enough. So Chris and I pretty much deliberate on what more to do next because there's so much more we can do. And we're excited, motivated, and continue to, I think, deliver success for Spirent and our customers.
Oh, that's exciting. And one final little fast fact, a little bit of trivia for the viewers. One of us on this call was a performer at the Olympics. And I just love the Olympics. And I wanted to call it up. I'll let the viewers guess which one of us was at the Olympics as a competitor, not just a viewer, as I was. I'll say it wasn't me. Just I'll start off by saying that there is no 5,000-meter walk competition at the Olympics. What about
There
you,
is.
Raj? Was it you? Were you an Olympic athlete?
I'll let the
No.
viewers guess.
Okay. Well,
Evan, are you
maybe.
sure there's not a 5,000-meter walk?
Yeah, I could be the guy. So, Chris, I think you're the last one left. So
Yes,
tell
yes.
us, just give us a quick.
That was me.
What
Yes.
sport
Yeah.
did you perform?
Yeah, I was in the '92 Olympics for fencing, representing the
That is so
United
fun.
States. Yeah. So thanks for embarrassing me. But yes,
Do you
yes.
do you when in your travels? Do you bring your sword? A sword? I'm
Sometimes
sorry.
I do. Yeah, I still compete in
Yep,
my age group.
that's
So
awesome.
I won't disclose what that age group is, but I still compete in my age group and internationally. Yeah, I do sometimes bring them with me.
That is so fun, so cool. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining,
Thank
and
you.
thanks, viewers. Thanks for watching. Look forward to your feedback as always. Take care, everyone.
Thanks a
Stay
lot,
safe.
Evan.